Started. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to have Stefanie Overstreet on with us today. Stefanie Overstreet is a longtime friend of mine, fellow registered nurse. She's going to be sharing a little bit more about what she does, but we're actually having her on the show today to talk with me about navigating chronic illness and chronic symptoms from a place of hope. Because this is something that we see with both of our client bases, but also different, we've walked it out individually and together in different aspects of our lives, and have just felt like this is a really necessary conversation as we pursue healing, right? There still has to be this kind of internal process that we walk through. So Stefanie, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself today?
Yeah, so I'm a registered nurse and a nutritional therapy practitioner, and I love to teach mamas how to have a more peaceful, supported postpartum, grounded in the presence of God. And so we work closely together for 3 to 4 months and look at how do we approach postpartum from a holistic standpoint. So not just looking at some of the practical things like nutrition and support, which obviously are your starting place, but also looking at what are the foundational beliefs that I have, the mindsets that I'm carrying, the story that I'm telling myself, and also how well connected am I to myself, relationships with
Yes.
others, and with God, really. Because when we bring all of those things together, that's when we experience a much better, more supported, more enjoyable postpartum, which really the thing that I've seen across the board is that mamas just want to enjoy their baby. They want to enjoy their children. And so this was kind of my
Yes.
um, goal, is to hone in on that postpartum season, that first year after having a baby, to really make that more possible for other women.
Absolutely. And you do it so well. I love the method that you use with your clients. And I think all the time, like, gosh, how much that would have changed. Well, both of us, like, we would have had a
Mhm.
completely different first postpartum experience with our children. And what you walked through in that initial postpartum experience is what led you to really birth this, this beautiful process for people. And I know for both of us individually, it's what catalyzed so much of our own physical and emotional healing, was what we learned I mean, I know for me, and I know that's true for you, what we learned about ourselves and what we needed in that season, and how it was drastically different than what conventional medicine provided us, right? You get that 6-week checkup, and as long as the stitches are good, you're good. And it's like, that's not even close to being healthy, or even like, that's like, giving you a spoonful when you need a whole bucket. It's just not even. But I wanted to talk today a little bit about how we one, recognize that we're dealing with chronic illness, because sometimes, or a chronic health issue, because sometimes it can move very quickly from acute to chronic, right? And we don't recognize that we're there all of a sudden. But how do we recognize that we're in that place of like, okay, now I'm dealing with a chronic health issue? And you can share a little bit about what that journey has been like for you as a practitioner, or what you've observed with your clients, that's helped you to navigate that place.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You were talking about postpartum, and I know for both of us, but in my journey, I had had some chronic symptoms from already as a teenager. I needed to take naps after school as a tired. And then kind of fatigue was probably a common thing for me through college and nursing school. And then I remember working night shift and just having some anxiety pop up, and even some insomnia,
Yep.
because of the stress of that environment. And however, I kind of managed to band-aid those symptoms and kind of pull it together and get through that season. And even traveling with my husband and doing a lot of, you know, airplane travel and shifting time zones and things, I kind of managed to get through it with the fatigue. But it wasn't until I had my first baby, and after having her and during that postpartum season, that was when my health issues really took a turn. And I think with postpartum depression and anxiety, this is really, like you said, that experience is what birthed the peace method, which is what I guide women through with postpartum. It's because I saw in my own situation that there were definitely mental and emotional and spiritual factors that were contributing, and work that needed to be done in those areas, as well as what was going on in my body, that those
Yep.
chronic symptoms were really going to come to a head, because postpartum is kind of like that pressure cooker where
Yep.
the stuff that you were able to kind of band-aid and keep beneath the surface for all
Not
those
anymore.
years, the added stress of postpartum brings it to the
Yep.
surface. And so that, this is something I talk about with my clients a lot, but it can be really, um, like, can throw you off because you're not expecting to have anxiety or depression or sleep issues or all the things after you've just had a baby. And
Right.
yet it is an opportunity, though. I will say now I've learned to see it as an opportunity where this is a chance for us to recognize, to take a step back and say, how did I
Yes.
get here?
Yes.
What are the experiences in my life that brought me to this place? And then also, like, okay, so now I have an opportunity to learn how to do some things differently. And so I kind of had to figure out that journey quite a bit on my own, but now
Right.
it's a joy to be able to collapse time for other women and simplify that journey for them and working with
Absolutely.
them.
No, I think
Yeah.
you landed on on the point there, I think, which is that we don't just end up there, right? It's not just something that
Yeah.
happens. Like I thought for some reason, I think just my perceptions on what I'd heard, like my mom and my aunts talk about postpartum, it's just this thing that happens and like nobody knows why it happens, was my impression of that experience, right? But then,
Mhm.
looking back, very similar to you, it was like I didn't get help with conventional medicine. I had to go find a naturopath who could put the pieces together. And he literally did a PowerPoint presentation and was like, this is the picture of your life. And all of the things, like he literally had this little character and he was like, these are all of the things that have led up to you getting to where you are right now. And half of them were things I didn't want to own, honestly. I didn't want to own how stress was impacting me. I think there's very much, at least in the nursing profession, this culture that you take what comes to you and you handle it and you put on a brave face and you better
Mhm.
not show that you need anything because we're there to serve, right? And
Mhm.
at least in my department, it was very much like you're less than if you go to a step down unit or something like that. So I
Mhm.
definitely had mental roadblocks that, and even some pride there, I would say, that was keeping me from recognizing just how human I was.
Mhm.
Um, and that, that I had lost my dad 5 weeks after my daughter was born. Like, of course, that's going to contribute. I'd
Mhm.
been on antibiotics like the majority of my life. So, of course, that's going to contribute as well. But I think, especially when we're talking about chronic issues, or all of a sudden now it's a chronic issue, right? We don't
Yes.
ever just end up there. It's not typically just something that happens. There's multiple different facets that get us to that place. And so I don't know if you would feel comfortable sharing. I know I can share a little bit from my own experience, but if you want to share a little bit about what that journey has been like for you in kind of unraveling, those different pieces, because once you got out of postpartum, you were out of that kind of that dark place, right? That really difficult place. And now you're seeing, okay, some of these issues are really like they're not going away. And
Mhm.
how do you navigate that from a place of overcoming, that mindset of like a developing an overcoming mindset with that and having hope in that place, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's a question. It's a common question. And especially like, how do you not get to that hopeless place? How do you keep the faith
Mhm.
and the hope going when you are in it for the long haul? And I think that, so for me, um, my first baby was 2 or 2.5 when I was diagnosed with SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And that's actually not a root cause condition. It's a condition that's secondary to other issues, especially related to chronic stress. And um, chronic stress then shuts down your digestion and it alters your blood sugar regulation. So those were my two downfalls, if you will,
Mhm.
where my digestion was breaking down, and SIBO became a thing during that season, and then also the blood sugar dysregulation was the main driver of the fatigue and the different things that I'd
Yes.
had kind of my whole life. So um, I realized at that point, yes, I kind of come out of the dark place, but now I'm like, I have this giant mess of all these,
Years of stuff.
chronic health symptoms. And now what do I do? And so it has been a journey. And I think the biggest thing really is kind of keeping perspective. I think we have to, and this is what I love about what you do. You're so good at this, but we have to develop those rhythms for how do we steward our emotions in a healthy way. And maybe you can speak to this in a minute, but how do we give ourselves room to process the feelings? Because we know if we just shove them in a closet, they're still there
Yeah.
and they're going to
Unfortunately.
pop out,
Unfortunately. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's with chronic symptoms, it's like, how do I, leave space for the emotions and process them, but not allow them to take over? And
Yes.
how do I keep perspective? And
Mhm.
how do I, yeah, coming back to the realization of, oh, this is a long game. Like, this body is mine for the rest of my years on this earth. So it's going to take some time. I didn't get here overnight, like you said. And
Yep.
so it's going to take some time to heal. And, especially when you're told that something like SIBO is recurrent, I
Right.
have chosen to um, accept that I just have to be sick. My
Right.
perspective has always been that there's always, more that can be done. And really, that our God designed our bodies to heal.
Yes.
And our body is actually on the same team. So these are some of the things that I had to learn, which are these mindsets of it's a long game. My
Yes.
body actually wants to heal. And if I can give it the things, the support and the things it needs, it actually wants to be healthy. It doesn't
Totally.
want to exist in a state of sickness.